I was accused of sexually assaulting a minor. This is going to be long, but I'll just type it all out. I need to have the narrative clear in my mind for future reference, but it occurs to me that others may benefit from hearing this and perhaps some commentary around it. A couple of cops showed up at my door last night, wanted to talk to me. I wasn't being arrested, they just wanted to investigate a complaint. A 17-year-old, at the time, girl claiming I'd assaulted her. Some background: I'm an average 50-year-old white guy with a wife and 2 kids. I've never in my life done anything that would even remotely fall into this category, going back as long as I can remember. On the contrary, I've always been taught, and have been, respectful and, okay, yada yada, fill in the blanks. I'm sure every criminal claims to be a nice guy too, so let's not waste time. I just mention I've never in my life ever been accused of anything of the sort, and my first impulse was to tell these cops they must have the wrong person. So they shared her name, and I drew a complete blank. I've never heard that name, a fake. Who is she? When did this happen? What happened? It happened on a certain day in June of this year at a big hotel downtown. Okay, now I'm sure they have the wrong guy, but let's explore this. I've been at that hotel a few times for gala events or whatever, I don't recall ever spending a night there. Well, turns out it was my nephew's graduation party. My nephew goes to a boarding school, and since his family is far away, my wife and I filled in as his family at this big grade 12 grad party. I do remember that. But who's this girl? Well, turns out it was her grad date. I'd never met her before, wouldn't have remembered her name, wouldn't recognize her if I saw her, and frankly, don't even recall interacting with her. So WTF is this actually all about? Well, say the cops, you tell us. What's your recollection of that evening with respect to this girl? Okay, it's very straightforward. Like I said, we'd never met. When my wife and I got there, my nephew and this girl were already there. We went up to them to say hi. My wife hugged the nephew, my wife hugged this girl, I hugged the nephew, I hugged the girl, there was some idle small talk, they went off to see some friends, I went off to find some other parents I knew, eventually we sat down for dinner. I did not sit next to, or across from, this girl. She sat elsewhere, I didn't speak a word to her. At some point, she and the nephew got up and, as it turns out, left, never saw them again that night. And never saw or heard from or about that girl ever again. Till yesterday. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, and it's the truth, so unless she's claiming that hug was a sexual assault, I sincerely don't know what you're talking about. And yeah, as it turns out, that's exactly it. She didn't like the hug. Apparently she's not a hugger. So 6 months after I assaulted her by hugging her hello, she called the cops. Among the many questions I had for the cops, I asked them why isn't my wife also being investigated, didn't she do the exact same thing? The investigators are not unreasonable and I understand their job is to investigate complaints, and after speaking to me, and my wife, separately, they left, saying, we will not be recommending charges and you likely won't hear anything further regarding this matter. Thank you for your time. So, good. Okay. Case closed, to whatever extent it was ever open. I called my nephew right away and dragged him out of his sleep, 3 time zones ahead, now studying at an East Coast university. Sorry dude, but I need to know what's up. Yeah, she doesn't like hugs. She did mention it that night but not really in anger, just a FYI. My nephew hadn't spoken to her in a while, but she oddly contacted him recently asking for our wife and I full names and street address. Nephew oddly assumed for Christmas card, but whatever, he gave her the info. They had dated a few more times after that, but then he took off and she stayed in town, and while they didn't part on best terms, it was nothing for which she'd be seeking revenge or whatever. He was puzzled and upset. And so am I. It looks like this will just go away, but I have to wonder what would have happened if these cops had shown up at my work? And what if someone overheard sexual blah 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 being discussed with me? And or what if I coached my 12-year-old daughter's softball team, and these cops went on a rampage asking other parents if I'd ever hugged their little girls? Well, my daughter doesn't play softball and I've never coached any team, but my train of thought took me to how fucking devastating this could have been, and it's making me really angry. As per above somewhere, I am respectful of women and applaud heartily the openness with which our society finds itself these days. Women are feeling more empowered than ever to step up and say their piece. And every single one of them should be heard when there's a story that needs to be heard. But this? In this climate of openness, something like this could destroy a life. Okay, I get it, you don't like hugs. Tell people that. Say something beforehand. And don't overreact. And geez, sexual assault? Do those words really have the clout they should? That they used to? Unwanted hug, sexual assault. Dragged into the bushes and forcibly raped, sexual assault. Catcalled from across the street, sexual assault. I'll admit I've always felt a sort of where there's smoke there's fire attitude to accusers and their accused. Certainly in cases where multiple women claim multiple transgressions against a specific person. But that is a far cry from one accusation against someone with zero history. And I suppose the cops get that. Not just that the crime wasn't very heinous after all, but given the complete lack of pattern behavior and how clearly there was no untoward intent, they're seeing it for what it is, basically nothing. I guess if I'm in the wrong here, I'll hear about it. And X200B. Edit. Well, there's a lot to respond to, a few questions have come up multiple times, so I'll just answer them here. And certainly, one thing that came up a lot, don't talk to the police without a lawyer. I've never actually spoken to cops about anything except getting speeding tickets or neighborhood break-ins. I would have thought when you've actually done nothing wrong, it'd be okay to talk candidly. And as someone pointed out, lawyering up almost certainly looks guilty and is likely to lead to more questioning and whatever else. So, I recognize the advice, but part of me wants to disagree when you've actually done nothing wrong. The issue with this is that if it proceeds any further, then people will hear about it and then it's all over for me. The only chance of it going away quietly is playing along? Was I wrong with that assumption? And that wasn't even my thinking, perhaps I'm just naive and stupid. I really don't know. The hug was a lame one. In hindsight, I don't think she really hugged me back. She didn't take a step back or say anything, and it was little more than a quick 1.5 arm squeeze. Certainly no groping or whatever else. If this goes away quietly, which I expect it will, I have no intention of suing her or counterclaim or whatever. Ultimately, at least for now, there are no damages to speak of, and instigating something would only draw attention to it. I just want it to go away. A few people have indeed accused me of violating her space. You know what, I grew up in a time where there was nothing wrong with a hug. It's that simple. I realize times have obviously changed, and the goalposts keep moving. I guess I can't reasonably claim I didn't know it wasn't okay to hug someone, especially as it was the fourth hug out of 4. She didn't say a word to anyone about anything while that was going on. And not a word to me either. But yes, unfortunately, lesson learned. Don't worry, it won't happen again. And friends and their kids who are used to hugs from me know more of that. I'd rather be known as cold and unfriendly than a sexual deviant. I am not going to ask for consent before hugging anyone. That feels ridiculous. No more hugs, very easy. As has been mentioned, I have to think she hooked up with some new friends who explained to her, whether she felt it or not, she's been victimized and should pursue it. That part of it is scary in this day and age, because there are people with some hardcore agendas who will find every opportunity to implement them. The thought of, yeah, he didn't really do anything so wrong, but make him defend himself with something like this, it's frightening. And thank you for the gold, kind stranger, your message really resonated with me. TLDR hugged a 17-year girl at my nephew's grad. 6 months later, she calls the cops claiming assault. Cops investigate and find I did nothing wrong. Response 1.
Makes me wonder what she told the cops. Did she tell them the same story? Because they would definitely want details if she was reporting a sexual assault.
And that's what an investigation is about. Police questioned Op, they didn't find any basis to substantiate the complaint. Maybe the questioning could have been at work, maybe others could have overheard it, etc. But that's not what happened. It was some questioning, which would be unnerving to anyone not having perpetrated a crime, and it was over. I was stopped as a potential DUI, was detained and had to do the straight line walk, etc. I told police I had 1 light beer over a 2-hour period. They finally agreed and let me go. My reputation could have been ruined if my boss drove by, etc. But my boss didn't drive by, and that didn't happen. Cops were doing their job trying to keep the streets safe.
I think what Bredeberger was getting at is that if she straight up told the cops she wasn't a hugger, and the only transgression was a hug, then it would be surprising that they investigate at all.
Response 2.
My ex-wife accused me of raping her. Here's the thing, I wasn't even in the same country as her when she said it happened. She didn't know I had already left the country. She was mad cause I was refusing to pay her phone bill.
Can't see why you divorced her.
IKR, she was even paying her own bills.
Response 3.
That's incredibly messed up, dude. Did your nephew talk to her? I'd love to hear her justification for it.
It's probably best if he doesn't. You don't want someone like that being able to claim she was being intimidated not to come forward or something like that. I would go full no contact with that girl, and that includes the nephew. Don't want to give her any more ammunition to make frivolous claims.
She'll probably get traumatized from being ignored at this point.
Deleted.
Response 4.
Hey, for future reference, do not speak to the police without a lawyer, regardless of how positive you are of your innocence. There is nothing you can say that will help, and literally anything you say can be used against you. Check this out when you have the time.
I've watched this video in full, and I still get anxiety about how I would execute it in a real person situation. Police, what happened with you and this girl? Me, I want my lawyer. I feel as though this can backfire worse.
That's exactly what cops want you to think, but having a lawyer means it's more likely you won't be wrongly convicted, no matter what. Maybe think of phrasing it as, I've read that if I'm ever being accused of a crime, I need to talk to a lawyer, so I'm going to wait for a lawyer.
I like this phrasing, thank you.
Response 5.
This is so messed up, dude. I'm sorry you went through this. I wonder if she actually considered the hug sexual assault, or she just felt like trying to ruin your life.
She probably didn't consider it sexual assault at the time, just uncomfortable. But probably was recently on a radical feminist page of some sort and was told that any touch from a man, unless you give them specific permission at every step, is sexual assault. I've seen it firsthand many a time. That would explain why Opwife didn't get blamed for sexual assault, because those same people don't believe that women can rape sexually assault other women.
That honestly sounds like the most probable scenario.
Response 6.
Deleted.
Response 7.
Next time, don't ever speak to a police officer without a lawyer present, ever. Their job is to collect evidence against you. Also, I'm a 41-year-old man, I work with younger girls who like to hug. I tell people, I'm a bubble person, I don't hug, stay the fuck out of my bubble, specifically to avoid the kinda crap you're going through. This isn't some result of Me Too, it's the realization that I only have one reputation, and it doesn't take much to ruin that. All it takes, as you've almost just learned, is one pissed off woman to ruin your life. My dad gave me that advice over 25 years ago, and it served me well.
It is a direct result of Me Too not policing itself. They just encourage every accusation made, regardless of merit.
The scary thing is that this is true. I see women on social media who encourage any type of accusation against men under the guise of women empowerment.
Response 8.
If they come back, don't talk, get a lawyer.
Don't talk.
Response 9.
Deleted. Deleted.
Frubus, quote, adjective, false, fictitious, contrived. Nobody believed his Frubus story, and X200B.
Did you just make this up? There is no frubus in any English dictionary that I'm aware of. Are people thinking of frivolous?
Response 10.
Never talk to the cops, you got off lucky. Maybe. Or maybe tomorrow they arrest you based on what you said after running it by the DA.
I think in this scenario he did the right thing. With the information we have now, even if the girl said he raped her, this would never go to trial. The wife is his alibi for the whole night, and his nephew was with the girl for the whole night, and I'm sure there's countless other potential witnesses that could testify on his behalf. He told them what he did, and it corroborated with what they were told, so they let it go. Had they showed up and he immediately goes into Fifth Amendment mode, they really have no choice but to bring it to trial, or at least bring it to court. Now this 50-year-old man is facing a sexual assault case, and when media gets a hold of it, now his work hears he's potentially a statutory rapist, etc.
Quote, had they showed up and he immediately goes into Fifth Amendment mode, they really have no choice but to bring it to trial, or at least bring it to court. This is very erroneous information that keeps people from using their rights as outlined in the Miranda warning. If they show up like that, you tell them you are finding a lawyer and will interview with that lawyer present. That lawyer is your witness, and will stop any potential self-incrimination and start a defense for you in case more people turn against you and it escalates to charges. What if nephew turned against Op, everyone was scared to testify, and girl said there was groping? Op would be fucked. I can't imagine trying to find and obtain a lawyer after you are already arrested and sitting in jail. You get a lawyer on first contact, not after you are already charged.
Response 11.
Jesus, what an absolute lunatic.